Good afternoon, morning, or evening, depends on when you're reading this. Fourth graders, this is Mr. Mangan, coming to you live from McKinley's room. I was going to finish up reading one of my books before. I was going to read the sixth grade nickname game ending, but I don't have it with me because I think I gave it to a kid, and I think they took it with them. So sometime I'll try to read the end of that book to you guys as well. We're going to start reading this epic book, The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. And this book is outstanding about Greek mythology, lots and lots of action. So, without further ado, here we go. Chapter 1 is called I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher. Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is, close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom or dad told you about your birth, and try to lead a normal life. Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid reading this because you think it's fiction, well, great. Read on. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognize yourself in these pages, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us. And once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too, and they'll come for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Until a few months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, you could say that. I could start at any point in my short, miserable life to prove it. But things really started going bad last May when our sixth grade class took a field trip to Manhattan. 28 mental case kids and 2 teachers on a yellow school bus heading to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. I know, it sounds like torture. Most Yancey field trips were. But Mr. Bruner, our Latin teacher, was leading this trip, so I had high hopes. Mr. Bruner was this middle-aged guy in a motorized wheelchair. He had thinning hair and a scruffy beard and a frayed tweed jacket, which always smelled like coffee. You wouldn't think he'd be cool, but he told stories and jokes and let us play games in class. He also had this awesome collection of Roman armor and weapons, so he was the only teacher whose class didn't put me to sleep. I hope the trip will be okay. At least I hope that for once I wouldn't get in trouble. Boy, was I wrong. Go ahead and turn and talk to someone around you, maybe a pet stuffed animal. I have a little baby Jack here. I have Sunny next to me as well. You guys can see Sunny. But turn and talk and try to figure out what in the world will be going on, what is going to happen here. He says he's going to get in trouble, so I'm thinking, I don't know. It's going to be bad news. It's hard for me to predict because I know what's going to happen. So what is your idea? What do you think is going to happen? Sounds good. Of course you're talking about violence. All right, here we go. We'll continue. See, bad things happen to me on field trips. Like at my 5th grade school, when we went to the Saratoga battlefield, I had this accident with a Revolutionary War cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course I got expelled anyway. And before that, at my 4th grade school, when I took a behind-the-scenes tour of the Marine World Shark Pool, I sort of hit the wrong lever on the catwalk, and our class took an unplanned swim. And the time before that, well, you get the idea. This trip, I was determined to be good. All the way into the city, I put up with Nancy Bullowfit, the freckly, red-headed kleptomaniac girl, hitting my best friend, Grover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. That sounds delicious, huh? Grover was an easy target. He was scrawny. He cried when he got frustrated. He must have been held back several grades because he was the only 6th grader with acne and the start of a wispy beard on his chin. On top of all that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had some kind of muscular disease in his legs. He walked funny, like every step hurt him. But don't let that fool you. You should have seen him run when it was enchilada day in the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy Bullowfit was throwing wads of sandwich that stuck in his curly brown hair, and she knew I couldn't do anything back to her because I was already on probation. The headmaster had threatened me with death by in-school suspension if anything bad, embarrassing, or even mildly entertaining happened on this trip. I'm gonna kill her, I mumbled. Grover tried to calm me down. It's okay, I like peanut butter. He dodged another piece of Nancy's lunch. That's it. I started to get up, but Grover pulled me back down to my seat. You're already on probation, he reminded me. You know who'll get blamed if anything happens. Looking back at it, I wish I'd decked Nancy Bullwhip right then and there. In-school suspension would have been nothing compared to the mess I was about to get myself into. That's pretty interesting here, too. So I'll read just a little bit more, and this is a long book, so we'll be doing lots and lots of different parts. Mr. Brunner led the museum tour. He rolled up front in his wheelchair, guiding us through the big, echoey galleries, past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. It blew my mind that this stuff had survived for 2,000, 3,000 years. He gathered us around a 13-foot-tall stone column with a big sphinx on the top and started telling us how it was a grave marker, a steal, for a girl about our age. He told us about the carvings on the sides. I was trying to listen to what he had to say because it was actually kind of interesting. But everybody around me was talking, and every time I told them to shut up, the other teacher, chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, would give me the evil eye. Mrs. Dodds was this little math teacher from Georgia who always wore a black leather jacket, even though she was 50 years old. She looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancey halfway through the year when our last math teacher had a nervous breakdown. From her first day, Mrs. Dodds loved Nancy Bullwhip and figured I was devil spawn. She would point her crooked finger at me and say, "Now, honey!" Real sweet, and I knew I was going to get after-school detention for a month. One time after she made me erase answers out of old math workbooks until midnight, I told Grover, I didn't think Mrs. Dodds was human. He looked at me real serious and said, "You're absolutely right." Mr. Brunner kept talking about Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Bullwhip snickered something about the naked guy on the steel, and I turned around and said, "Will you shut up?" It came out louder than I meant it to. The whole group laughed. Mr. Brunner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson," he said, "did you have a comment?" My face was totally red, and I said, "No, sir." Mr. Brunner pointed to one of the pictures on the steel. "Perhaps you'll tell us what this picture represents." I looked at the carving and felt a flush of relief because I actually recognized it. That's Kronos eating his kids, right? Greek mythology is a little bit weird. "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because..." Well, I racked my brain to remember. Kronos was the king god and... God? Mr. Brunner asked. Titan, I corrected myself. And he didn't trust his kids, who were the gods. So, Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later, when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad Kronos into barfing up his brothers and sisters. "Ew," said one of the girls behind me. "And so there was this big fight between the gods and the Titans," I continued. "And the gods won." Some snickers from the group. Behind me, Nancy Bullwhip mumbled to a friend, "Like we're ever going to use this in real life. Like it's going to say in our job applications, please explain why Kronos ate his kids." "And why, Mr. Jackson," Brunner said, "to paraphrase Miss Bullwhip's excellent question, does this matter in real life?" "Busted!" Grover muttered. "Shut up!" There's a lot of shut-ups going on. Nancy hissed, her face even brighter than her hair. At least Nancy got packed too. Mr. Brunner was the only one who ever caught her saying anything wrong. He had radar ears. I thought about his question and shrugged. "I don't know, sir." "I see." Mr. Brunner looked disappointed. "Well, half credit, Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him disgorge, that's disgusting, his other 5 children, who, of course, being immortal gods, had been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe, and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you lead us back outside?" The class darted off, the girls holding their stomachs, the guys pushing each other around and acting like doofuses. That's what guys do, right? Grover and I were about to follow when Mr. Brunner said, "Mr. Jackson." I told Grover to keep going, then I turned toward Mr. Brunner. Sir? Mr. Bruner had this look that wouldn't let you go. Intense brown eyes that could have been 1,000 years old and had seen everything. You must learn to answer my question, Mr. Bruner asked, or told me. About the Titans? About real life. About how your studies apply to it. Oh. What you learn from me, he said, is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will accept only the best from you, Percy Jackson. I wanted to get angry. This guy pushed me so hard. I mean, sure, it was kind of cool on tournament days when he dressed up in a suit of Roman armor and shouted, "Whoa!" and challenged us, sword point. Sorry, Sonny, I woke you up. Against chalk, to run to the board and name every Greek and Roman person who ever lived. But their mother, and what god they worshipped. But Mr. Bruner expected me to be as good as everybody else, despite the fact that I had dyslexia and attention deficit disorder, and I never made a grade above C- in my life. Again, the fact that he has dyslexia means that he can't really read the words and they kind of are all scrambled around, which is pretty interesting. So he had bad grades, he had that, and he really was like a hyper kid that really couldn't control himself. So lots of things going on. And I couldn't learn all those names and facts, much less spell them correctly. But he expected me to be better. I mumbled something about trying harder while Mr. Bruner took one long, sad look at the steel, like he'd been at this girl's funeral. He told me to go outside and eat my lunch. There's an interesting part coming up in tomorrow's reading. So I hope you enjoy the beginning of The Lightning Thief. You will love this book. It's awesome. A lot of fun. We'll see you later. You guys did a great job on your first day of work. See you soon.